Go watch parts 1 to 3. Seriously, why are you here if you haven't? I love SpongeBob vs Aquaman, and I think I speak for everyone when I say we need another SpongeBob episode. My most wanted out of these is Squidward vs Benson, the battle between the angry musicians who have to deal with a pair of slackers every day, often at the cost of their own mental health. This has a lot of potential to be a really fun fight. I have no idea how it'd start, but I imagine it could be some form of music contest, since both have powers in relation to their instruments. I saw an idea for when Angry Benson eventually comes out that he burns Squidward so badly that it causes Handsome Squidward to come out, and that image is way too funny not to mention. I think a moment where Benson realizes that Squidward is almost just like him, only to project every bad thing he's ever said about himself onto Squidward, would be a really fitting way to end the fight, allowing for Benson not only to have a character arc, but it could be a way to end the fight in a very unique way. You see, I think Squidward takes this easily, and having Benson overload himself out of anger is way too cool of an idea to pass up. Please, we need this. As mentioned once before, I really like Kung Fu Panda, and I have a few more matchups in mind that I really want. I know we all talk about how cool Tai Lung and Kai would be on the show, but I don't see anybody talk about Tigress, which is shocking to me since she's basically the main side character. So who are our options? There's Mercenary, who I don't care for, there's Raphael, which doesn't vibe with me, and then there's my preferred, Ahsoka. The battle between secondary protagonists who were orphaned at a young age, only to be trained by peacekeeping organizations to master a spiritual energy that can be used to build, deal damage, and give life. It's simple, and that's okay. Not every matchup needs a crap ton of connections to work. I know we're tired of Force users, but I think a character original to the cartoons could be a nice change of pace. It helps that she has her own show now as well. Tigress has always been one of my favourites too, and if any of the Furious 5 deserve an episode, it's obviously her. She has a lot to work with writing wise thanks to the Legends of Awesomeness as well. Ahsoka probably wins, which is sad, but hey ho, not every Kung Fu Panda character is planet level. We need more human level fights. They seem so easy to put into production, and easy enough on the research team as well. One of my favourites has to be Ellie vs Clem. I've never played the Last of Us games, although it's on my to-do list, but Telltale's The Walking Dead games hold a special place in my heart, so seeing its central character get covered will mean a lot to me. I believe Clem wins as well, which is really based. This being on for TOC means it has a shot now as well. As for the fight, just have it be dark, gritty, and have them both fighting off the undead. Except, unlike Leon vs Frank, have them get tired and have some close calls. It'd be a neat way to raise the tension without the two harming each other. This one could be boring in the wrong hands, I'm well aware, but I have faith that this could be a season highlight if it's done right. You know, Marvel vs DC episodes can be hyped sometimes, if the characters they use are interesting, and like Mysterio vs Scarecrow, I have another involving two villains that can use some more love. Larfleeze vs Annihilus. It's grown on me over the years. Not only am I a big Lantern fan, but Annihilus seems like a really cool villain. Two characters who just want more power via their immense greed. There's an easy setup too, with Annihilus wanting the Orange Lantern battery and Larfleeze wanting the Cosmic Control Rod. This should be a Larfleeze win, thank god. Just have some unique Lantern choreography and a gory death, and this should be a good episode. I've mentioned Kung Fu Panda twice now, and spoilers for later on in the series, but the three first villains are all on here. Lord Shen was tricky to find one that really clicked with. There's Quan Chi, who I was originally going to go with, but after looking into the connections more, it just doesn't vibe with me. There's Frieza, which no. And then there's my preferred, Shen vs Fire Lord Sozin, members of peaceful royal families who wish to conquer the world and spread their newfound industrial might with everyone else, genociding an entire race to do so due to the looming fear of a powerful chosen one who has the power to defeat them. It's really solid. Kung Fu Panda 2 is my favourite movie ever made, so seeing Shen would make my year, even if he isn't my favourite of the four villains. Sozin doesn't have a lot to work with, so you'd have to rely on scaling to other characters, but honestly I see this more as a navy/army battle than anything, with both squaring off in the end with the loser accepting their fate, with the winner claiming their army as their own. I presume Sozin takes this since mid-tier Kung Fu Panda scaling really isn't that impressive, but I could be wrong. Either way, we'd be in for something very unique. This was one I was hesitant on for a while. I think most of us can agree that Omnilander was amazing. It had pretty much everything you could ask for out of a Homelander episode, but I think Omni-Man could have done more. Not against John, of course, but someone else. I'm not going to sugarcoat it this time, you know where this is going. Omni-Man versus Bardock. A matchup I'd love to see happen. The battle between bad dads who are loyal to bloodthirsty empires, who turn against said empires for contrasting reasons. Nolan because of his love for Mark, and Bardock because his planet was going to go kaboom. Honestly, their contrasting attitudes towards their sons can make for something really interesting. Having Nolan lecture Bardock throughout the fight. I presume Bardock wins too, albeit not by much. Brandon could absolutely go hard with the track too, something similar to Final Form as I imagine. The only issue here is that Nolan had an episode in season 9, and yeah, there's spoilers to go over now, so I think we should wait a few years to get into this, but when it does happen, it will be hype as hell. This one's just funny. Otis versus Alex. As mentioned earlier, I grew up with Madagascar being a huge part of my childhood, giving me many fond memories with my family, and Barnyard was always very memeable back in primary school. This matchup works really well thematically too, which I did not realize until now. I have no idea how this could start, nor what the choreography would even look like, since these two don't have too much toon force. Otis probably wins via scaling to pig, which is sad, but you get used to it with this show. I just think an analysis on these two would be super fun given how many memes spawn from both franchises, and they're not characters we usually get on the show. It should be a fun time. I mentioned earlier that Telltale's The Walking Dead holds a special place in my heart. Yep, I have another idea that I really like for it. Kenny versus Joel. Two Southern Christian fathers from zombie apocalypse games who lose their children, causing them to go cold, but eventually warm up after looking after a girl who recently lost someone who was taking care of them, almost becoming uncle figures for him, dying in front of him in controversial ways. I love Kenny. He's by far my favourite The Walking Dead game character. Having lost people in my life, I know what it's like to go cold because of it, but also know that with the right people, I'd do anything for them, and it can brighten me up. So Kenny's journey hit home for me. Pretty much everything I said about Clem vs Ellie applies here. It's grounded, and we need more like it. You can also include the undead in the mix as well. However, with how nutty these two can be, it should get really violent. Kenny wins, which is really based. I just think there's enough here to distinguish itself from Ellie vs Clem. And yeah, I know Joel vs Rick exists, but I don't care that much about that one. And Rick has other cool alternatives. Having 3 Kung Fu Panda matchups so close to each other is probably going to get boring to some of you, but this is my list and I can do what I want with it. Shifu versus Splinter would make a lot of people happy, including myself. 2 old masters who raise anthropomorphic heroes in the ways of martial arts and mindfulness. As a kid, I never appreciated Shifu's arc in Kung Fu Panda 1, but years later, having gone through most of my education within my life now, I understand the value of teaching students in a way that's appropriate to their strengths. And Splinter was cool from what I remember of the 2012 show. I don't know what style you would use here. The custom sprites for Poe have always looked off to me, so I'd hope this could be in 3D. I hear Splinter wins unless you wank Shifu to the planet level feats, which doesn't make sense to me. This could have a beautiful sounding track as well, probably by Werewolf. I imagine this would get the Might Might treatment of being a respectful spar between 2 old friends, with Splinter thanking Shifu at the end for a good fight, and for teaching him some new wisdom, while Shifu is thankful for allowing him to ascend and finally achieve inner peace. There's a lot you can do here. I just don't know if the choreography will be very interesting. Prove me wrong, Ben and Chad. This one may be the most unfair matchup on this list. Kazuya vs Wesker has always sounded awesome to me. The battle of demonic bad dad CEOs. After the cast, it kind of soured a lot of people on this concept, since Kazuya is now planet level and Wesker is only around city level from what I've heard. That being said, I don't care. If you honestly think a stomp would make a matchup less cool, then you're kind of boring, I can't lie. Kazuya has always been cool to me, although I never really played him in Tekken, and Wesker seems cool from DBD and MVC. Again, as mentioned earlier, I haven't played an RE game yet. It's kinda in the same position as Liu Kang vs Jago, where one new game just makes it super unfair, even though the potential becomes even higher. Have the fight take place by a volcano, since both have history with them. You don't need to animate much in terms of hand-to-hand, thankfully, since Wesker doesn't fight that way. Just make these two seem really tanky, similar to how Vader was portrayed in his fight against Obito, only for Devil Kazuya to just obliterate Albert. Liam thinks he could write a sick fight here, and I'm sure Brandon would make an amazing lyrical track here. I'd honestly say just make it a DBX at first, just to see what ideas could be played with. Thankfully, there is another Tekken matchup I'll mention later on that I'd prefer over this. And that's part 4 done. I didn't have as much as I thought I'd have to say on some of these. Hopefully this makes editing this a little easier. The list is nearing its halfway point, and I'm super happy with the views it's been getting. Hopefully at least one of these piqued your interest as well. So with that being said, as always, be excellent to each other.